Welcome to Worthy Ones, the video series where I take all the newest issue ones for the current comic book week that I read and deem them worthy or not worthy. Guys, I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy and you love daily comic book content, you came to the right place. Why don't you consider hitting that subscribe button? Also, if you want to become a member of my channel, super easy. Just hit that join button right there on my home screen. And as low as 99 cents, you guys get early access to my videos. You get stickers on your comments during live streams and regular comments. And then also you get monthly badges to let you know and everybody else know how long you have been a member for Comic Book Corner 2.0. So with that being said, guys, it's much appreciated for everybody watching the channel. So let's get started with this week's wonderful episode of Worthy Ones. The first issue we'll be talking about today is Giant Size X-Men. This is issue 1. It's a 48-page comic for $7. There's 3 different writers on here: Ann Nocenti, Mark Grunwald, and Ralph Macchio. The art is done by Lee Ferguson. The art style is not necessarily my style. I wasn't a fan of it. A lot of little panels in here. I felt like the characters lacked some details. Here we get some a page of this like Jean Grey and Warren here, and it just like, instead of it being much more detailed in the back and fiery, it just felt like more of just like a color. I just felt that it could have had so much more. Like, look at Archangel here. It just looks like, again, there's something missing with the art when you're reading this story. And you get introduced to this new character by the name of Maze. And she's kind of like I would say a knockoff of Arcade, right? And in fact, I think Arcade is the mentor of this particular character, and she's messing with Warren. And in between all this that's going on, if you want to learn about the character's origin story, it's fine for that, right? I mean, you get to learn what he was when he was a little kid, and him experiencing, him becoming a mutant, and or his mutant gene is, acting up, whatever it is, and things like that, So it was pretty much a quick read because it's a 48-page comic, and then you wind up getting a Marvel team-up book here with The Thing and Angel. And so if that is your kind of thing, if this is what you're expecting, then that's fine. Now, that would be worthy for you. But for me, this book was not worthy. I thought, even though it was interesting learning about Angel's little past history, I feel that it doesn't warrant the $7 that this book costs. And the story was a one shot. It was very much a throwaway story. And no one is really going to remember this like in a week from now at all. I don't think it really makes an impact. Sure, it's a fun read, but at the end of the day, there's so many other comics out there that you can spend your money on that you would probably get more enjoyment out of this. So with that being said, at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a C. Very average, very forgettable, but it was entertaining. And if you for the origin story, and if you have the extra money, then why not buy it? Especially if you like X-Men. So before we continue on, I realized that I did not pick up The Boy Wonder, the DC Black Label book. I didn't see it at my shop. I'm going to have to find out to see if I can get a copy, so maybe I can do it on next week's episode of Worthy Ones. So with that being said, let's continue on now, and we're going to talk about the Valiant issue 1. This is obviously from Valiant, and they're relaunching their universe once again. And at this point, when it comes to Valiant, can you rely on them to release a book on a monthly basis? Can you rely on the universe lasting longer? I've never really been huge into Valiant. There's a couple characters that I've liked. I've read the XMen Award series, the original one. I read some of Ninjak stuff. And since this was a new issue 1 and I wanted to see what Valiant had to offer in this newest, I guess, reboot for their universe once again. So this book is 32 pages. This one's $5. Written by Ryan Caddy. The art is done by Al Barunovo. The art's pretty good. Especially, of course, when I saw one of my favorite characters, Ninjak, in this book. I thought it was cool. There's a bunch of different characters in this comic book where we get to see, like, the Internal Warrior, Jamie Capshaw. You get to see, like I said, Ninjak and Bloodshot, Livewire. And there's all these different characters in here, okay? And what this book does in the beginning is it does give you a little brief, like, profile card on the different types of characters. So if you're not familiar with them, it gives you a little bit of an insight. So what was this book about? Well, in Washington, D.C., all of a sudden there is this, like, mysterious sinkhole that winds up emerges. And then what happens is our team goes into the depths of this sinkhole, and they have to explore it. So this is kind of the way it kind of looks. So they built, like, this pathway to go inside of it. And then there's all these, like, little hidden dangers that they come across. It's not something that we haven't seen before, right? It looked kind of cool. Nice little 2-page spread in there. And, and you get to see the person that's in charge of everything. And that was it, Was this book worthy for me? No, it was not worthy. I didn't find it all that entertaining. Yes, we've seen very similar stories like this before, but comics do repeat stories all the time, so that's not what bothers me. I just found that as a new number one, I didn't find the characters very interesting to the point where it's like, man, I want to read this series going forward because I really like this person or I really like that person. They feel like, okay, we're going to throw in a profile card. We're going to get you caught up on it. And then, hopefully you'll like it going forward. That's what I got out of it. I appreciated the action in here, but this just wasn't enough here to keep me going. So, again, I'm going to give this one a very average grade. This one's going to be a C- for me. And I'm just not going to continue it going forward. Okay, so now we're getting into some of the Blood Hunt stuff. And this first book we're talking about is Blood Hunters. This is issue 1. This is a 36-page comic for the price of $5. It's got Mark Russell, Christos Gage. It's got Schultz in there as writers. And, for events to have anthology books, I've just never personally been a fan of, because I feel like if you're just going to make a story, just make it one comic book, right? Especially when you have a story called Blood Hunters. It's like it seems like a group of people coming together to fight vampires, and this is a book that has 3 separate stories in it. Okay, the first one is called The City That Never Weeps, and this is the one by Mark Russell, and this is the one that has Clint in it. Now, I love Clint. I love Hawkeye. I think it's funny. And this is a story where obviously he fights vampires. And a lot of these stories start off the same way. It's like the night happens, the sun goes dark and the vampires appear and everyone is shocked. And then it's the hero's job to try to save the day. And what this book or this particular story does is it actually gives a light meaning to a very serious story, right? So if you like that and you like Clint, you're going to like that particular story. The second story has J. Jonah Jameson, and it has his son, Jameson Jr., can't talk, which would be Manwolf, right? And they're dealing with not the werewolves, but the vampires in this comic. The artwork was a little bit weird in here. It reminded me of more of like an anime style of artwork. So that one was fine. But that one for me was like my least favorite of the 3 stories. And then the third story is where I would like to see this as a spin-off book, right? I would love to see that. And you only get a few pages of that particular story, but this is a story with, Dagger, who is severely affected by this whole event because Cloak is an actual Dark Force user, and he's one of the ones that's became one of those things that blocked off the sun. So she's severely affected by all this, and you find her fighting vampires and struggling, and the artwork was actually pretty good in this one. And I would have loved to have seen a whole comic book of this. And then you wind up getting to see Elsa Bloodstone join her in the last page. So you don't get a conclusion to it, you just get a continuation. And again, I would have loved to have seen this as a whole story. So for me, this book is worthy. I will pick up the next issue of this just for that third story alone. I want to see how that continues. What other stories are going to be added into this whole Blood Hunter miniseries? I don't know. Was it the best thing ever? No, because I'm not an anthology guy. It's just a personal preference. So I'm going to give this one a C+. It's good, not great. It's what you can almost expect from a typical tie-in to an event. Dracula Blood Hunt issue 1. This is a 36-page comic for the price of $5. This book is written by Danny Lore, and the art is done by Vinzino Corratu. Artwork's good, man. I liked it. I love the way all the characters' facial expressions look, especially when, like, the end of the world is basically happening, right? What do they always call it? Sun death or something like that? Yeah, sun death. And Dracula looks really good in this comic, as well as he's like the major player in this book. The vampires look awesome. I love the red backgrounds. It makes all the characters pop as well. So overall, the way this book looked was awesome, and Brielle looked great too. So what was this really about? Well, when you have a vampire event, you have to have Dracula in it, right? And I was like, oh man, Dracula could be kind of cheesy. I had no expectations for this comic. But where this comic takes place is, if you got the free comic book day edition, the Blood Hunt one, it focuses around Blade's daughter. And basically, it gets to the point where Dracula is like, come with me if you want to live. It's like a Terminator moment, right? Well, this whole thing takes place all before that, up until the point where he literally says, come with me when you want to live. So you get to see the setup the very minute that the sun death happens, and we get to see his worshippers say, I have to go after, you know, this particular person so I can have them aid me in basically saving the world, okay? And then you just get to see Brielle at this point dealing with the situation at hand. You get to see the whole sun being blacked out, and because of this event that happens, it actually enhances her powers. She doesn't know how to control her powers. She gets stronger. She breaks off a car door, and she doesn't even realize it. And then all of a sudden, she's just going against all these different vampires, and she's fighting alongside Dracula through the whole entire time. And she can't believe that she sees Dracula. She's just like, holy cow. She's like, I've seen the best fighter, which is my dad, but then I've also seen the most powerful fighter, which is actually Dracula. And I thought that was a really cool moment in here. And then he comes to Brielle, and he winds up saying, you know, okay, we got to do this if you want to live. And she's like, okay, but listen, if you betray me, my dad is going to go after you and kick your ass. He's like, okay, you know. But it was a great, really fun, action-packed issue and the beginning of a team-up that wouldn't normally happen here. So I'm looking forward to the second issue, and this book is worthy. Absolutely, this was great. It surprised me in very many ways. It's not the best comic book. It doesn't have a super in-depth plot, but it ties into the event very well, and I really like that. It's not just some garbage book where it's just like, here, you're going to fight some random vampires, and that's all that's going on, right? This does enhance the story a little bit more. So I'm going to give this one a B. Now, when it comes to these tie-ins, I'm going to tell you, if you do read Doctor Strange, read that first before you read anything else when it comes to tie-ins, so you understand what's going on with Doctor Strange at that point. Because this next book I'm going to talk to you about that has to deal with Doctor Strange. So pick up Dracula. It was very surprising. Strange Academy Blood Hunt. This is issue 1. This is a 36-page comic for the price of $5. The writer here is Daniel Jose Older, and the artist and penciler here is Eric Gapster. I thought the kids looked great in this book, man. I was worried that, you know, since Roberto Ramos is not doing the artwork anymore, that the art would suffer in a Strange Academy comic book, but it didn't. It was actually fine, and I love seeing all the kids again doing all these, doing this adventure, fighting different vampires, and we actually get introduced to a new character in this comic book as well. And dude, I've totally forgot her name. Not even sure. I think it's Pia, if I stand corrected. And she has this little rabbit-like thing that keeps kind of her powers in check. Now, like I said earlier, you must read Doctor Strange. I wouldn't say you must read it, but you should read it to understand more what's going on here. I think when it comes to tie-ins, you're going to want to read the Jed MacKay books because they're really going to enhance the story the most. So obviously you read the main events, you read Moon Knight, you read Avengers, and you read Doctor Strange. And then if you did read Blood Hunt, obviously at this point, you know that Doctor Strange supposedly, gets slashed in half or bit by a vampire. And then in the most recent issue of Doctor Strange, spoiler, he becomes a vampire, okay? And they were creating this formula to get rid of all the vampires. And in order for Doctor Strange to get around him being a vampire right now, Clea pulled his soul out of the vampire body, and somehow he winds up entering the Strange Academy, going to Brother Voodoo to come up with the way to stop all vampires, right? Why would Doctor Strange kind of kill himself? I don't know. To save Earth? To save humanity? That's probably why, but it might be a little bit of a plot hole here. But yeah, you get to see him in here. So that's kind of what's going on. And then what happens is that kids overhear what's going on. So they take things into their own hands and they go on this venture, and they got to find a couple of items in order to make this spell actually happen. So they got to go to the Madripoor. They got to find the Darkhold, and the Darkhold is now this kid, and they start battling him, right? And so the big thing that you find out about this particular new character by the name of Pia is that she is an actual vampire to start. And it looked like this little rabbit thing protected her. And when the rabbit gets knocked out or killed or whatever, she automatically turns into the vampire again. And then you get to see her here all, eating other people. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then you get another little backstory here with Agatha and the Darkhold kid. And I guess that was, kind of fun. And then you get to see a little bit of the backstory of the new character, Pia. This book was worthy. I don't think it was a poor book. I do think it ties into the events decently, but it's a little bit of a stretch in my eyes, right? It's almost like, it's kind of like kids being kids, taking matters into their own hands, thinking they're doing right, when they could be possibly endangering themselves or making things worse. That's basically what this is, okay? So I found this book worthy. I did think it was good. I don't think it was great, but it's something for me that I'll continue to read because I do like the Strange Academy kids, and I'm going to give this one a C+. A lot of these tie-ins are right where I expected them to be, very average, maybe a little bit above average, but at least they're not absolutely horrible. So these next two books that we're going to discuss really reiterates that independent comics these days are just the way to go. The stories are just so original and just impactful and fill your heart with emotion. And this first book that I'm talking about is Aint No Grave. This is issue 1. This is a 48-page comic for the price of $6, written by Scotty Young. The art is done by Jorge Corona, the current artist of Transformers. He's also teamed up with Scotty Young in the past with with Middle West and what's it called? The Me You Love in the Dark. And it's awesome artwork, man. I really enjoy it. It's this fantasy, supernatural, Western style of comic book, right? And what I loved about this particular issue, it's a family issue. It's very grounded. Obviously, it's Western, it's fantasy, but it's about, in all reality, about a mom who is dying of some kind of cancer or disease or something like that. And she was this, I don't know if she was this great traveler or whatever it was, and she's going out on this adventure so she can take on death herself, because she won't accept the fact that she is going to die. And seeing her go on this adventure, right, was pretty interesting. But along the way, not only do you get to see her struggle with herself mentally, physically, but you also get to see all the flashbacks that happen along the way of when she first was diagnosed with her illness, how long she's got to live, and, you know, the trial and tribulation of just, you know, getting ready to go out on this adventure and then leave her family. This is a wonderful book, and the last page just left me going, oh man, I mean, this is what she's going to come across. So she figures if she kills death, that she will escape death herself. This book is worthy. I absolutely love this book. And this is what Skottie Young does so well. He did Strange Academy very well. That could have very well been an independent comic book, right? With all the characters he created there. But when you go back to his independent stuff, like The Me You Love in the Dark and Middle West, which was full of emotion as well, about a young boy who was abused that wound up going on an adventure, found a different family. I mean, that was awesome. And this one hits all in those same beats. So I love this book. This one is going to get an A. I can't wait to see the direction where this one goes, but there's going to be one book better than this one this week. Crocodile Black. This is issue 1. This is a $5 comic book. This is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, and the art is done by Somaneth Powell. The artwork is very interesting in this comic book. There's, you know, crazy drawings and things like that. Sometimes you don't know what's real and what's fake in this comic, and it's done on purpose, just for the pure reason as this book focuses on a boy by the name of Danny who suffers through mental health issues of escapism. And the issue with this comic is that it also takes place during COVID, like during 2021 when people are at home. There's things that are very limited, that are open. You have to wear masks everywhere, and this kid is just lost with dealing with everyday life, and you get to see his struggles, and that's very painful to see this, because this comic book really does pull at the heartstrings a bit, because this is something that is relatable that can happen to people out here. So what happens is this kid, he has this delivery job, right? He just is an online grocery shopper. He winds up doing an order for this particular guy, and he comes across this guy, and the dude is dead. And he sees that, and he starts calling 911 at first, and then he just puts his phone away, and then he's infatuated by these crocodile boots in the comic, right? And he's just like in awe of this. And this boy, he winds up taking these boots, he winds up taking his cigarette, and he like drives away. You see his family is trying to give him support, but then there's this, I think it's a granddad in the comic who's giving him a tough time, and then he just basically loses it in this comic. And then you're led to believe that maybe he's committing a murder in this book, because you get to see these crocodile shoes that were worn, and he stole those shoes. So it was insane. I think this book is absolutely worthy. There's a lot of questions. You're not 100% sure if it was this boy that committed this, but you can't help but feel sorry for this man or for this kid, right? Because it's just like he's going through so much mentally. And during COVID, oh my gosh, that's just insane right there. So at the end of the day, I love the mystery of this book, and I love this overall story. This book is an A+. I did not know what to really expect, because again, with murder books for me, or murder mystery books, you know, it's a hit and miss. But when you kind of add that horror theme and stuff that's, you know, where it affects everyday, like real life, you know, people or situations, it kind of hits home a little bit more. So definitely pick this one up if you were on the fence. So there you have it, webheads. That's what I thought of this week's newest number ones. Like I said, sorry I wasn't able to get Boy Wonder. Hopefully I'll be able to get it next week so I can talk about it next week. And if you love my content, I got more content right here for you to click on. In fact, I also have my newest comic book day haul where it shows you everything I picked up for the current comic book week. And as usual, guys, support those local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, read the comics so we can have great comic conversation just like this one. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.